All right, welcome to the Buddy Book Club. I'm Dylan here with mein Comrade, Keith. Guten Tag, Bruder.
Scheiße.
No.
That's the only German word I know.
Really?
Or alarm, alarm.
Wait, what's that? I don't know that one.
Whenever I played any World War II games and you sound the alarm, the Germans would be like, alarm, alarm. So I assume that means alarm.
Is that even a German word, and considering it's said exactly the same? It's like when in Love Actually, when they're having the British guy do all the different words with his accent. They're like, "Ooh, say this one." He's like, "Table." They're like, "Yeah, it's the same. Table's the same." All right, well, here at the Buddy Book Club, we're bringing out some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing All Quiet on the Western Front. This may sound like deja vu, but this time around we're talking about the 2022 Netflix film directed by Ed Berger. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or maybe a movie for us to watch, reach out to us. You can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or slide into our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes and Spotify, so please download and subscribe. Keith, we're doing something different this time around. It's 2023. Why not mix it up, right?
Yeah, we're trying to come into your homes more often, you know?
Yeah, ears.
Yeah, ears. Okay. Ears. Come into your ears more often. There we go.
But yeah, so I think we're going to try to be pushing to do the movies of some of the books we've read, and additionally probably some scatter in some other movies out there. I find the term cinephile to be a terrible term, and if anyone referred themselves to a cinephile, I'd say get out. It's like someone saying they're a foodie. Please, sir.
Anything with file on it is, I wouldn't want to go by that. I mean, especially after that court case, I just don't really want to, have that tied to my name anymore. Yeah.
So we're going to start with All Quiet on the Western Front because, one, it's fairly new, and two, we just read the book, so why not watch the movie too? The movie itself, like I said, was directed by Ed Berger, was made by Netflix. This is actually the third iteration of this movie. There was one that was made in 1930, which won 2 Academy Awards, Outstanding Production and Best Director. And then it was adapted again in 1979 as a made-for-TV movie. I actually started watching that one, which I think I mentioned on the book pod. It has the owner from Basketball, the guy who dies from choking on the hot dog, as one of the characters. I couldn't take it seriously because of that.
Yeah, you can't after that.
Keith, let's jump into some stock up, stock down. What do you got for stock up?
Yeah, stock up, pissing in public. First off, I'm not even sure why pissing in public is bad or frowned upon. It's sterile. I understand shitting in public, right? That there's definitely a lot of things that can be transmitted from that, right?
Sure.
But you're out in the woods, you're out anywhere, you should be able to piss in public. I mean, I don't want people whipping their dicks out and doing that, but it should just be, hey, you go off in the woods, you can do whatever you want. That's fine. I mean, we let our dogs do it, animals are doing it. I don't really understand what the big deal is.
One, it's funny that you said pee is sterile because the SGF said that to me maybe 2 days ago, and I said, oh, okay, if that's the case, why don't you drink it? And she said, I'm not drinking that. And I said, well, that's the point.
The reason I know that is only from Dodgeball, right?
Yeah, of course.
Where the guy goes, I don't need to drink my own pee, but it's sterile and I like the taste.
I think that's pretty accurate.
I have no idea if it's sterile or not. I'm just saying sterile. I don't even know what sterile means. I'll be honest with you. I'm just throwing that word out there.
Yeah, I kind of need to know what you define as peeing in public. Like, are you saying you're waiting for a train in a subway and you just turn around and pee on the wall? Or are you saying you're walking on a hike and you step off the trail to pee in the woods?
Exactly. I was going to say golfing. I was out over the weekend and throwing the football around. There's no bathroom in sight. I'm at a school, and I'm like, I need to piss so bad. I go off.
Is this about going to lead to that court case you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. I go and pee in the woods, and I'm like, it's so ridiculous that if someone walked by here, I'd be arrested, and I'd literally be like labeled a pedophile because I need to take a piss in the woods. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, Mm-hmm. But let me get back to the point.
Yeah, sorry.
The whole book, I mean, this is what the podcast is about, is kind of the differences here. But the whole book, and even in the movie, there's no shame in pissing. There's no shame in taking a shit next to someone. Like, it's just, desensitized completely. They even have in the movie, which I thought was a great scene, this like heartfelt scene while they're shitting.
Yep.
He's like reading from the note. But at the end of the movie, and this is really my only and biggest qualm of the movie, they steal the goose, and Katz is in the field and just walks off into the woods. Why? To take a piss.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What are you doing? Just
pee right
there. Take a piss right there.
Yeah.
They're not like, it wasn't like he's in a big group of people. He's in the middle of nowhere in this huge field. Take a piss.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? So start pissing in public.
Yeah, I think your point is if you walk away to pee, then you'll get shot by a farm boy.
You'll get shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right, and that's why pissing in public should be allowed and stock up.
I actually think that was the message behind this movie, was that it was all leading up to that moment, and that's where the director wanted to take it. So good on you, Ed Berger. I appreciate it. I will now pee everywhere. You know what's actually quite enjoyable after buying my own house is peeing on your own property, not in your bathroom. I got a big yard. I just step outside. Sometimes me and the dog will go out in the morning. I'll be like, I gotta take a piss. She'll pee. I'll pee. We look at each other, give each other a little wink.
Does she defend you while you're pissing?
No, she doesn't. Unfortunately, luckily there's no farms close, so no boys are gonna be coming up to try to shoot me. My first stock up is World War I movies in general. I mean, there's just not enough attention, I feel, by filmmakers to World War I. We have a ton of World War II movies, and don't get me wrong, I love war movies. I don't know why we all do. I mean, they're usually brutal and terrible. And I was thinking about this. I love watching movies, but I often find that I feel stupid because afterwards, whether I like the movie or don't like it, I'll read up on it, just find some reviewer and see, like a smart person, not like someone on Google just reviewing it, and see what they have to say about it. And there's always this like way deep meaning that they're pulling out of it, and I just take it for a story. Like, I don't know. I don't read into it too much. I'm like, oh, I didn't see any of that, so I'm an idiot. But maybe we love war movies because the message is always pretty clear. It's like, war is terrible. It brings people together, though, and you form these crazy tight relationships, but on the whole, like, war is hell and don't get involved with it. Maybe that's why we like them, but there's just not enough World War I stuff. We had 1917 recently, which was great. I don't know how you felt about that, but
yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good movie. The only other one I can think about is like Paths of Glory, which is Stanley Kubrick movie. That's like half courtroom drama, though. Really good movie if you haven't seen that. We don't have enough World War I stuff, and I'm hoping that, with two really in back-to-back years, maybe they'll look more into it, because Dan Carlin, who we've referenced on the pod before, who's a podcaster himself, has an amazing series called Blueprint for Armageddon about World War I. Each episode's 4 hours long. There's like 5 episodes, and any 30 minutes could be made into a full-length feature film. I'm just kind of hoping that they dig more into that, because it's just such a crazy time in history where the technology was so advanced, but the military strategy was catching up to the technology. The amount of deaths is insane. The scope of everything, all of Europe was in battle, while there's media around. Like, there's newspapers and radio, and like, this is all happening. It's wild, and this is all kind of happening at the same time. I mean, wasn't the light bulb or something invented in like 1910, and there's a giant world war like less than 10 years later? It's just crazy to think about. Just step it up with World War I stuff. Did you have any other stock ups?
I have more stock up entrance songs. I've actually wrote a blog about closer songs and what makes them great. But
well, hold on. What's a closer song? Like for pitchers?
Yeah, when the closer comes out. But they roll through with their squad. And this, I wanted to ask you, because I couldn't find anything on this, but I'm pretty sure this is the last war that they roll through. They roll through with trumpets playing. They're like, let's get them, boys. They're still playing music. This has to be the last war where they actually had musical instruments in the battlefield, because I know that was big back in the day. They'd like show up with like drums and shit. I mean, even way back in the day, they would be like, they'd use that to intimidate people. But this has to be the last war with both music and horses, right?
No, World War II, huge. Tons of horses used in World War II.
Oh, did it? Okay. Yeah, that's why I bring you to the pod, Did they have music playing in World War II, though? Did they have the trumpets going?
No, I don't think so. And also, like, World War I, at the beginning, at the onset, we're talking leather helmets, and some French or Belgian military would have their old, like, red dress, not camouflage or whatever the case is. Like, they'd have their red tunics, which is just, absurd.
But yeah, Edwin Diaz, the closer from the Mets, a little stolen valor by doing the trumpet song as his entrance song. Like, come on, bro, that's been done. That was a World War I thing. Come on.
You're saying for entrance music, just like entering the battle, or were you talking about the actual music of this film?
Just entrance songs in general. I mean, you show up and you get the music going.
Yeah.
I was ready to jump into that war, then I saw it and I was like, never mind, I'm out.
I thought you were talking about the entrance of like the movie, like the music at the beginning, really like the 3 notes. But
Gotcha.
Well, I want to get into that at some other point. But my other stock up was, and my second and final was, films that don't have the U.S. as the main point of view. It's something that I think we take for granted being Americans, and having our biggest export be pop culture, really. If you think about it, that's, to me at least, that's our biggest export to the rest of the world. And because of that, because all of the movie making, not all, but the big movie making, it's all in English, and it focuses on Americans or Canadians or British people. It rarely focuses on others, especially the enemy in these wars. I thought it was awesome when Clint Eastwood made back-to-back movies about Iwo Jima. One was from the U.S. perspective, and then the other one was from Japan perspective. It was like, oh, that's a really cool way to do it. But it's something you don't see that often, because usually, you're watching Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck, and it's just this Michael Bay movie that's amazing, and it just makes the Japanese people out to be like, not that cool. It's nice to have a different perspective, and I'd like to see more of it. Maybe redo Last of the Mohicans, but flip it, and we'll do it from the French and Indian side. What do you ever stuck down?
Stuck down for me, pump-up speeches. I'm usually kind of a fan of these, but the German that was given the pump-up speech in the beginning, that was trash. That was a trash speech, right? I honestly can't now think of like a really good pump-up speech that's like motivated me, that amped me up, and unless it's really in the moment. Like if you were like about to charge a line and give a good speech, all right, I get it. You kind of need that, right? A game's about to start, you need something. But given that pump-up speech to go do something, that doesn't make sense. I would never do it. It's too risky, because what happens is every single thing after that point is that person's fault. So when I'd be like in the ditch, like day one, I'd just be like, that fucking dude gave me that speech. It didn't matter that it has nothing to do with him. Everything's his fault now.
Are you talking about when they're at the school? Like the teacher gives it, the headmaster?
Yeah, the guy's giving the speech. Terrible speech, by the way. That guy sucked, but everything's on him. Like, I don't care that, they weren't getting the right rations and they had no food. That probably didn't have anything to do with the guy's speech, but it was all his fault. Every single thing's his fault after that fact. You know what I mean? Like, that's why you don't give that type of pump-up speech right there.
So what do you think about like pump-up speeches in sports?
Yeah, in game. They're about to like start a game. You need motivation. I get that. Like, let's say like, hey, D-Man, you got to come out to San Diego. It's the best weather. It's the greatest thing ever. You have to come out. You have to come out. You come out. It's a shitty time. Everything's on me. 100% on me. No matter what happens, on me. Your flight gets delayed. Like, God damn it, Keith. That's your fault. That's completely fair. That's why you don't give pump-up speeches unless you're willing to risk all that.
You gotta come out to San Diego. The flights are never delayed.
Yeah. I control everything that happens to you. That's my fault. The weather's bad. That's on me. Everything's gonna be on me after that point.
I've never thought about it from that perspective.
It's a lot of pressure, but sometimes you gotta wear it. But this guy miscalculated that.
Okay, I'm still kind of thinking about that one. I'm gonna be thinking about it for a while. You know what I think about all the time actually is when we did that Neil Gaiman book, American Gods, and there was the 4 bad gods or whatever the case was, where they were like
apocalypse.
But they were like the ones that were the biker gang that were like trifle bad things. Like they weren't really that bad. It was like having a booger you can't pick or something like that. And you asked me what mine would be, and I drew a total blank. But now I think about it all the time. Like I can't get it out of my head. Like anytime something little happens, it's like really annoying. I even thought about it today. I was eating corn chips and like Tostitos, and sometimes like the big ones, when they're like too big to really fit in your mouth, but you just go for it. You're like, I'm not going to sit here and break this up. I'm just going to go for it. And then you're a slob, so you just eat the entire bag, and it like cuts the side of your mouth, and then the salt gets in there. That's another one. I was like, this would be another terrible god. So
Kid, these are all blogs on the BBC. I don't know what you're doing.
All right, my first stock down is dubbed movies. So, question, I probably should ask you this off the bat. Did you watch the dubbed version, or did you watch the German version?
I watched the dubbed version. Actually, in one of my hates, I said, I noticed that they weren't speaking English, or that it seemed like they was off. Their voices were off the whole time. What's going on? It seems like they're not... Their mouths aren't lined up with what they're saying. It's so weird.
Yeah, you're like, what's going on? These British guys actually are wearing the wrong outfits. They're wearing German outfits.
Yeah.
My stock down is dubbed movies. It automatically went to the dub version when I was watching Netflix.
You also are like phone off, paying full attention. You're locked in 100%.
Buddy, this is for the Buddy Book Club. We take this shit seriously over here, okay?
I also can't read, so I read audiobook or listen to audiobooks, kid. So that's against my whole principle.
Different movies for different vibes. Like if I'm watching the aforementioned Dodgeball, which I love, I'm half in, I'm half out, because like in terms of paying attention, because it's good background noise, it's fun to watch, but I don't need to. It's also like I've watched it a few times. If I'm going to watch a movie for the first time, I'm probably not going to be on social media. But for the dubs, I just find they're just not good. It bothers me anyways when like your sound is off slightly and you can see that the mouth is moving differently than the audio. So that would take me out of the movie way more than anything else. And I just have a problem with this move to just dub everything. They did it with Attack on Titan, which is a great cartoon, Japanese anime cartoon, and they dubbed it, and it's terrible, and the non-dubbed version is way better. And I feel like the same with this, because I asked my buddy about it before I watched it. He said, oh, just watch the dub version, it's fine. And he made good points in that there's not a ton of dialogue. There's way more like action sequences. Also, it's pretty dark throughout a lot of it, so the mouth stuff doesn't really tie in. I felt the German in it more, as obvious as that is considering it's in German, but you feel like, okay, this is not an English speaking situation. I just don't like dub movies in general. I'd stop down on them. I wish Netflix would have just put it in the German version. I feel like that would have pushed more people to just go with it and then say, oh, if they want to, they can switch over to the dub version, but instead it autoed to the dub. So hey, Netflix, do better. That's all I got to say about that.
And the only strong opinion I have is I hate, you just kind of mentioned Dodgeball. I can't stand subtitles because a lot of people like watching subtitles now on comedies. You can't do that on a comedy. You just can't.
The problem with any subtitle is your eyes just get drawn to it.
Yeah, but like the joke happens before the joke is said.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
I just read the joke. It's like there goes the element of surprise, you know?
What else do you have for Stock Down?
My last one was mustaches, Stock Down.
Oh, don't tell me you're going to shit on Katz's mustache, because that mustache was fake.
Whoa, let me get into it. But if this movie taught me anything, it's that you don't trust a person with a mustache unless it's a working man's mustache, like Katz. Katz has a solid, run-of-the-mill, I eat eggs and bacon in the morning and sausage at night type mustache. I don't know if that means anything.
Oh, yeah. Are you projecting?
A working class man's mustache. Now, those little fuckboys, Frederick, with that fucking twirly long mustache, and everyone else in between. And the longer your mustache was, the bigger dickhead you were.
That's so true. That's a great point.
That's all you needed to know from this. And I will say, and we're not about stereotypes here in this at the Buddy Book Club, but I've only met one person with a mustache similar to that Frederick guy. And guess what? He was a huge dickhead also. So if you're listening out there, I mean, you could just guess where he's from, San Francisco. But
I'm trying to think.
He's listening out there.
I'm trying to think of people I know or people I've seen of late that have like the waxed mustache. And the only person I can think of is Gavin McInnes, who's like the head or was the head of the Proud Boy piece of shit, white supremacist gang. So
well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're not doing it ironically, then you're just a complete asshole.
Are you still an asshole if you're doing it ironically? Like, it doesn't.
If you're dressing up for Halloween, you're doing it because there's certain people that would do that for like No Shave November or whatever.
Yeah.
Just as a fucking gag, like you're just pulling someone's chain. You're not serious with it. People that are serious with it are complete assholes. I'm sorry for all of our listeners out there that have that, but you're a complete asshole.
We also learned this from like Rocky and Bullwinkle and all of the other animated TV shows when we were kids, because the bad guys would always have these long curly mustaches, right? Like maybe it's because of this. Maybe we have some like geo issues because all of those movies or those TV shows came out like after World War II, and they just blamed it on those European people. But actually, no, there's a lot of that in the U.S. too. So yeah, all the robber barons, all the rich fucks, the aristocrats, they were always had their twirly mustaches waxed up. Yeah, fuck those guys.
All right, you're on the same page.
I'm with
you.
You
came
I'm
around.
with you. I came around.
All right, I like it.
As long as you weren't shitting on Katz's terrible mustache, which was awesome.
Whoa,
terrible
sir.
in its pattern and just, you know, half there, half not there. It looks so disgusting. I appreciated it.
There's nothing wrong with not being able to grow a proper mustache or beard.
Hey,
so yeah, I'm with Cats.
Tell me about it. I'm right there. I'm right there with you both. My final stock down was fighting after the war has ended. Let me be clear. If anyone, especially if a fat waxed mustache guy comes out on his balcony after eating a whole hog and I'm having turnip bread and he's like, all right, the war's over, but we're fighting to get this one town back because we want to have this town, I'd be like, I am out of here. There is nothing. Yeah. And they kind of made it seem, well, they definitely made it seem, the captains or whatnot were kind of making sure you didn't run away and were getting into the attack. But the second the attack started, I would just be face down in the mud and I'd say, you know, let me know when it's over because I'm not going in there. And
well, I think the point is like you're not going to leave your boys behind. Like everyone couldn't do that, you know. So you're just like, well, everyone's doing it. I got to fucking go.
That's a good point. But at that point, Paul, our main character here, he has nobody left. So
he probably wanted to die.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. And it was like somewhat of muscle memory. It's just like everything's terrible. So like, why would anything be different? And we do know from the book that he didn't see himself able to like reintegrate into normal life afterwards. He was like, I don't even know how that's possible. So I think he probably went into that expecting his own death. But it's just for me, I mean, obviously I didn't experience all that stuff, but come on. No way. Like, the war's over. It's like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, but we're going to do this one last fight. It's like, wait, what? And throughout history, that is a thing where the news like didn't make its way down to like different places and they like continued fighting until they eventually heard about it. Now they know. The guy told them like it's over, but we're going to fight and we're going to fight for the fatherland. This guy's just got like tiny dick energy. No, sorry. I'm out. You didn't have favorite scene on here, but I'm just wondering if you did have one.
The whole book, or the whole movie rather, I should say, is kind of one big battle. So I think it was all really solid. I really did like the heartfelt scene when they were shitting together. Oh, that was nice. Reading his letters for him, and then you like zoom out and you're like, oh, they're taking a shit right now, which I thought was both funny and heartwarming, you know?
Did it make you uncomfortable when after they pooped, they just pulled up their trousers and walked away?
I mean, they're eating turnip bread. It just goes right through you. I don't think they don't even need to wipe.
Really? I was like, come on, you're in a forest. There's got to be a couple of leaves, a couple of good maple leaves, just anything really, just to get that first.
It makes me uncomfortable talking about that.
Yeah, just to get that first one. It doesn't. I don't even care if you got skid marks and whatnot, but the turtle head that's left, you got to get rid of that. You got to.
Jesus Christ. The BBC difference here, right here. That's what you're hearing.
All Quiet on the Western Front, the movie, 2022 Netflix. What did you love about it?
We already mentioned him, but Cats, I thought they nailed that character. I loved him. From the first scene, he comes on, I'm like, that's Cats. Yep.
Exactly.
They fucking crushed that. Yeah, he was just awesome. I thought the whole movie was casted well. I mean, we didn't really get into the characters in the book of everyone else other than Cats and Paul.
Besides the one friend who, Tjaden, who ends up stabbing himself in the neck, which was terrible. But they had the one other guy who was like the really skinny one. They didn't really dive into a lot of the character stuff about it. So
I also didn't really get how the ugliest one of them was getting all the girls. That didn't make sense to me.
It's hustle.
No offense.
That's
fair.
Hustle.
Yeah, I guess he did at the cock of the walk, you know.
I mean, confidence and putting yourself out there. It's that's for all our young listeners out there who are like, oh, I'm not attractive enough to do it. You just exude confidence, not irrational confidence, stay in your lane, but exude confidence and put yourself out there. My first love is actually kind of a love-hate. It's the unending barrage of carnage in this movie. Like you said, though, it's just a 2.5 hour battle scene pretty much. It's like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan for 2.5 hours. It's effective in, it's like, holy fucking shit, this is intense and war is fucking brutal. It's effective in that way, but I think the downtime, it takes away from a lot of the character development that we have in the book. And a scene that jumped out to both of us was the heartfelt scene when they're taking a poop and he's reading his wife's letter to him about, their son who had died, and not the other 2 hours and 29 minutes of the battles. So they kind of abbreviated the friend who went to the hospital and said, you know, you can take my boots. They like abbreviated that stuff. They took out some other stuff, which we're going to talk about later, but I think that would have added more to it as opposed to just these amazing battle scenes, which were amazing, and the scope was awesome. So that's why it's a love-hate, because it was crazy, but I needed a breather.
I do think also that the realness of war can't really be told over the pages. Like, you can talk about how you're hungry, but like when you see someone that's like looks like he's starving, when you see like the realness of war, the rain, the coldness, which I don't think they really covered as much as like the coldness was very apparent. I was getting like freezing watching the movie, you know, like just like sitting in the rain being like, holy shit, this is brutal. I mean, just the general discomfort being like the biggest enemy, that kind of really could be told much better in a movie format, which I loved from this as well.
And when they're all like waiting in the like little hole while the barrage is going on, and the one guy's just like, I gotta get out of here. It's like, oh, it's so stressful. It was just such a stressful watch.
Yeah.
I told the SGF we were gonna watch it. She was like, okay, that sounds good. And then like halfway through, she's like, why are we watching this? It's terrible. What else did you love?
All the war stuff you already pointed out. The flamethrower. Anytime there's a flamethrower in any movie, it's pretty savage.
First use of a flamethrower in battle. I think it was invented for World War One. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
Flamethrower. A ton of things were the tank, flamethrower, barbed wire. If it wasn't driven home by that point how terrible war is, like, there you go. Just, I mean, I couldn't imagine being someone at that time, and these people walk up with flamethrowers. It's just like, this is hell. This is like a crazy horror movie. Like, it's just these guys in like full
it's
gas
also so
masks.
Unnecessary. It makes no sense why you do that.
Use a flamethrower?
I mean, I'd rather have a guy with like 15 grenades, you know, that's just like throwing grenades everywhere. Like a flamethrower is just like, how do I make the worst death possible? Oh, let me like light this guy on fire so he doesn't die immediately, but just burns.
Well, it's effective in taking out trenches for sure, especially because like there's like little pockets.
Yeah, but so are grenades.
Very effective in Vietnam as well, especially because like you're in the jungle. So.
Well, the brush. Yeah, that's true.
I also loved the opening scene, which, well, with the uniform getting, like the opening scene, the guy dies, like the random person dies, but the whole idea of this uniform going from this dead body, getting recycled, the name tag taken off, the horrors of war, and then given back to this young and excited new recruit. So innocent, you know, oh, I think you gave me someone else's uniform. Yeah. It's like, oh, yeah, here, sorry about that, and just rips it off.
I was going to push back on that. I actually think that was one of my first hates.
Oh, really?
Obviously, we know what's going to happen, but I think it would be much better if it started and you're just in through the eyes of Paul and you're like, oh, man, this is going to be great. This is going to be such a cool experience going to war. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to run out there and like this war is going to be over in a month after I get out there.
Yeah.
And you go from this like bright when you're just following Paul around, everything's bright, right?
Jazzed,
everything's like
he's lit up.
Everything's great. Then you go from that to immediately like the worst thing possible. That would have much bigger of an effect. But like the first 5 minutes of the movie are like, this is how bad everything is. It's like, oh, okay. There's like, you just ruined the whole surprise.
Yeah, maybe I liked it because that was one of those examples of earlier, like how I never understand messaging. And like, that was very clear to me. This is just a giant war machine and human lives are just a piece.
Well, it would have been good to end it like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good...
Although I guess the war ended, though, so it wouldn't really make sense.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense.
They could have done it midway through the movie where they didn't really do the hospital scene, which I'll get into in the next category, but he could have been, you know, at the hospital or something, and they're getting new recruits, and they're getting handed the same thing he saw, but, like, it's his buddies, you know.
Yeah, he notices, like, the same hole or something like that.
And they're just excited, and he's like, oh.
Well, they also could have just ended it differently without that whole final battle thing, and it just been Paul, his uniform goes through that whole process and then is given to some new person, because it wasn't at the end of the war in the book when he died. Like the war wasn't like the war's over today, but they had to tie in the whole armistice stuff that was getting signed. So interesting. You liked it. I liked it. You didn't. I get it. My last one is the score, which is what I thought you were going for earlier when you said the entrance music or whatever, because it has those 3 notes that like burr, 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 which just like rattles your cage and gets you ready for it.
It's very whoever Christopher Nolan uses.
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes with a score, like sometimes I care, sometimes I don't. In my mind, it can rarely make a movie worse. It's not like if they started playing like Cyndi Lauper or something during this, it'd be confusing. But if the score hits, it makes it so much better. Hans Zimmer in all the Christopher Nolan movies, I mean, Interstellar score's amazing. Obviously, Lord of the Rings stuff is so good, but this guy who did it, Volker Bertelmann, I thought he did such a good job. Sometimes less is more. And I think about like Jaws in this situation where it's just like da-da, 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 da. It's like it's iconic. Everyone knows what that is. And Volker does something similar here, less iconic, but with those 3 chords, supposedly used a harmonium, which is a pump organ. Slow down, Keith. And put it through an amplifier. And easy enough. He just crushed it. And lastly, the tank scene. I loved that. We kind of talked about it briefly when they got the tanks and the flamethrowers and stuff. But I just personally love when there's a new devastating technology or things that haven't been seen before happen to our main characters. I'm thinking like Grond in Lord of the Rings, the battering ram that comes to Minas Tirith. It's like, holy shit. Or, the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, and the people are seeing this for the first time. It's like, holy fuck. Their fear is palpable, and you can only imagine what it would be like to see something that has never been seen before, and it's coming right at you. That was pretty cool. What did you hate?
I mean, I already went over the beginning scene, and then I already went over also the dubs. The voice. It was weird. Yeah. It sounds like they weren't speaking English.
Don't fucking listen to dubs.
It was so weird. It was so weird. I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah, my only 2 hates were the 2 main characters' deaths. Kat's death, I don't know why they had to change that. I don't know why it had to be by this farmer boy when they were out there. The only thing I can think of, well, is 2 things. One is people that had seen the other ones or read the books, like they wanted to do something different, and why not? Yeah. Or they're trying to show how war even affects farm boys in France who don't have anything to do with fighting. It even poisons them.
It kind of gave me the City of Thieves feel.
Like it was just so random?
Yeah, yes. Like everything is going to work out. We finally did something good, and then, just random things can happen and you'll die. Like where in City of Thieves, he gets shot at the end by his own guy, and it's just like, Jesus, we went through all this, and now something stupid's going to happen to kill me? Like that's what the vibe was, which I liked. So.
And then Paul's death, it kind of took away from the title of the novel/book, because it's supposed to be just like Paul's just another tally mark that dies on another quiet day on the Western Front. This wasn't a quiet day. It was this rogue general just deciding to fight after. Like that would make the news, right? So it wasn't a quiet day on the Western Front. It was quite the opposite. So I didn't necessarily love that. I think it could have ended in a more open-ended sense, but we knew that Paul had died. Let's jump into listener mail. What do you have for listener mail?
You've got mail.
John from Casper, Wyoming.
Johnny.
Our biggest audience size in Casper, Wyoming.
We're huge in Casper. Also a big fan of the Ghost.
Friendly Casper the Ghost. Paul stabs a guy in no man's land and then proceeds to fill his mouth with mud. Is that the worst possible way to die? What would be your worst possible way to die? This has also been a blog topic I wrote recently. So.
On buddybookclub.com. Well, I will say that the SGF was shielding her eyes and bawling uncontrollably throughout this entire scene.
Jesus. I was too. So.
It was extremely long. The scene itself was so long, and it was so terrible. The closest thing that I could think about was the Jewish guy dying in Saving Private Ryan, where he's like getting stabbed in the chest, and the German guy's like, shh, 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 shh. It was like, oh my God.
That was by far the worst.
It was so fucked up. And then I thought I'd never seen anything worse. And like, this was terrible. It affects you. It's impossible for it not to. And normally you think you're going to see something like that in a Hostel or something like that where you're prepared for it. But this was terrible. Mm-hmm. So back to the question itself. Is this the most terrible way to die? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Probably not, which is sad because it was so horrible. I think there was one Saw movie where someone had to crawl through like razor blades or something like that. That sounds worse.
I think if we're not just talking about like torture chambers, just like something that could potentially happen to you tomorrow, I think is the question.
I mean, the guy did die in that 10-minute scene, so that's not bad.
Yeah.
Whereas there was probably lots and lots of deaths, and there definitely was lots and lots of deaths in this war where you have like, your guts hanging out in no man's land, and just for days. Yeah, just for days. Like, it's not a kill shot, and you're just out there, wounds festering, counting all of your intestines.
Rats eating
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. You can't defend yourself. There's rats trying to gnaw on yesterday's meal, which is on the outside as opposed to the inside. I think that would be worse for sure.
Okay. No, I like that. I will read you off my 3 most brutal deaths from a movie scene, and let me know what you think of these. Saving Private Ryan stabbing scene that you already referenced, number 3.
Yeah.
Number 2, this one I think you'll like. The Rock, the VX gas, where he puts the little cube in the guy's mouth. Yeah, he burns from the inside out.
Yep.
And then number 1, and I still can't watch this scene because it was Casino, the baseball bat scene.
Yeah.
Do you remember this? I still have nightmares about that. That showed on TNT. They just showed that. They're like, yeah, they edit out all the swears, and then they're like, oh, you're a 10-year-old? Yeah, you can watch this movie, but we're not going to let you see the swears. However, here's a scene where these 2 guys get beat up with a baseball bat and then thrown into a pit alive and buried. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? The
guy that did the sound effects for that scene should win an Oscar for whatever he did, because the thunk of the bat hitting him is really what I remember. That's what sticks with me, is that noise, that wet thunk. It's like, oh, good God. All right, let's get into some recast, rewrite, and review. There was a lot of differences between the book and the movie. We talked about some of them, the boy shooting cats. They removed Cantorek, who's the teacher character from the book, and Himmelstas, the drill sergeant. Paul's trip home during leave. They introduced this Colonel Klink character, who's this upper level military guy, and then the upper level military guys negotiating the peace treaty, and obviously Paul's death, which we talked about. There's way more than that. We're not going to dig into those in general, but they came out somewhat naturally. So if you have anything that you'd want to change from that, or you'd want to add in, let me know during this recast, rewrite, and review section.
First thing just is, I think the question to you as well, but would you recommend the book or the movie first? Because for me, I think I would, if someone had to ask, I would say do movie. I think the movie was actually better than the book. And I like the book, but I think the movie, like I said earlier, you can't really grasp what it feels like to be sitting in a puddle of rain unless you're seeing it, or you've imagined it before, where this is literally visualizing that really, really well.
I think this is the perfect movie then book situation. I disagree in that I think the book is better than the movie, but I think it's a perfect movie than book situation because...
But are you going to say every book is better than the movie, though? That's my question. If you had the chance to watch a 2-hour movie or a 10-hour book, you're getting more bang for your buck. What's the return on investment is what I'm getting at.
I get it, but what I'm trying to say is that because, like you said, the scope and the understanding the feelings of what's going on is so important that you can't really get in the book, and you can definitely get in the movie. Watch the movie, take those feelings and those images with you to the book, and because the book is so different in a lot of these ways than the movie, it will seem somewhat fresh.
That's fair. I just wanted to talk about the 2 changes I would have made to the movie, where I think they should have kept him going back home and the medical leave that he had, and even if they were quick snippets, that really drove home in the book specifically the fact that even if they win this war, even if the war ends, nothing matters anymore because everything sucks. He goes back home, he can't handle it. The medical situation, if you get leave because you're injured, is terrible. Nothing's good in this world. It really gives you that feeling of hopelessness where when he dies at the end, it's almost a relief, I feel like. Where in this, it doesn't necessarily feel like that. It's oh, I can't believe he died. That sucks because he was almost done. But it's in the book, it feels like when he dies, it's whatever, that's good. That's at least it's over.
So
now,
what would you cut? Because it's a 2.5 hour long movie. You don't want to make it 3 hours.
I would have cut some of the battles, although the battles are great. Cut that beginning part. I also think you could have cut the scarf. There's probably some symbolism with that, but I didn't get that. What was the point?
I didn't really either.
They're and then we'll pass the scarf down. I was like, what? Who gives a shit about the scarf? That also would have made the Theoden stabbing himself make more sense. They made it sound because you didn't really know his character, and you're oh, he just doesn't want to be crippled. But really, it's because he doesn't want to live in a world that's he's crippled and sucks after.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The leave home really also drew the whole higher level of the British, or excuse me, the French and the Germans getting together in the train car and negotiating peace. I understand how that is important to the greater world in that, now we know a lot of the reasons why World War II started, because this terrible deal that they kind of were forced to make that then led to the rise of Hitler. But it doesn't really have a ton to do with this story. And I would have liked him going home and, everyone kind of patting him on the back, being like, oh, how many people did you kill? And all this stuff. And he's like, holy shit, these people are so out of touch with what's actually going on over there. I think that would have been a better, part of this story than greater big picture stuff.
But the treaty thing was good because it's real. I didn't realize that. It provides context of like, look at these fucking dudes eating their, 5-star meals and in their silk pajamas while like these dudes are sleeping on like in mud.
When Hitler, at the beginning of the war, when he tried to get Neville Chamberlain to come in and basically like give him huge swaths of Europe, he had him do that in the same train car that they had signed the peace treaty from World War One as like a, hey, fuck you.
Because like a movie like Dunkirk, I'm just ignorant. I didn't know the history of that. So you're watching it and you're like, so what's going on? Like, what's the, you don't really have the overarching history where this actually gave you that perspective. Yeah. Where the books didn't do that, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, Dunkirk, love that movie, but I totally agree with you there. I was lucky enough to have stumbled upon this random guy who does a podcast and did 3 episodes on Dunkirk, so about like the history of it. Oh, nice. So I had listened to those 3 episodes previously, so I kind of knew, but I also watched that movie with the SGF, and she was like, I have no idea where we are, what we're doing, what's happening here.
Right. I'm like, what is Dunkirk? Who is this guy?
Seems like a nice guy.
He's done with what? I don't know. What is he done with? What's Kirk done with?
Let's get into the review section here. What did you, what's your review here?
Can you define it?
Define what? What review means?
Define your stars.
Oh.
You've patented the 4-star, the D-Man 4-star man. What
so
is that?
I tend to watch a lot of movies and I rate them in a 4-star format, which has actually become a problem lately because I'm just reviewing these and by review, I just put stars on them. I'm not writing anything, but I do it on my phone, like in my notes section after I watch a movie, and my buddy sent me this website or this app. He's like, oh, just use this app and it'll, find the movie for you. It keeps it, you can have friends on there. You can see what they're watching. I was like, oh, this sounds great. Guess what their format is? 5 stars. I don't even understand it. I don't know how to change. I watched a movie the other day. I was like, oh my God, what do I do here? So I like the 4-star. Half stars are allowed. We're not going into decimal places or difference than that. So, out of 4, 3.5's allowed. 4's the max. One of the reviews I saw that popped up on Google, it started with, now, I'm not a fan of war, violence, or really movies in general. But, and it continued. And that was the first thing that popped up on Google when I Googled this movie. So I thought it was fucking hilarious. I didn't even read it, obviously. I just saw that and thought it was hilarious. But this movie did get a 91 on Rotten Tomatoes and a 76 on Metacritic. Keith, what do you got?
I think I would give it, and again, I think you had told me at one point, like 3 stars is like a really good movie, one that you would recommend. So I would give it a 3-star. I think like Saving Private Ryan's a 4-star.
Saving Private Ryan is definitely a 4-star for me.
I think it could kind of get almost into that 3.5 range, but I like it. I don't think I could recommend it to everyone just because it is overly war and graphic. So I like it, but yeah, I thought it was very, very solid.
I agree with you, actually. I gave it a 3 as well. For some reason, I didn't put my star. Normally, I want this fresh, so I do it right after I watch the movie. Before I look at anything or, I don't want to give a movie like 2 stars and then read some review that tells me all this artsy fartsy shit and has 4 stars. And I'm like, oh, now I feel like an idiot. And I move mine up to 3.5 because of it. I don't want to do that. But I didn't give this a rating beforehand and it's just like, oh shit. So it was between a 3 and a 3.5 for me, but it just didn't hit the 3.5 mark. There was a lot of, like we said with the character development stuff, it was missing out on. I thought the scenes and whatnot were amazing. The setting was amazing. The score was amazing. 3.5 would almost be like Full Metal Jacket or something like that.
Yeah, I would put 1917 above this.
That's what? That's one of the things I was thinking about. I was like, well, I like 1917 more than this. 1917 isn't a perfect movie, but it's a 3.5. Sweet. So we're settling at 3. We'll put it in there. It's a unanimous 3-star, and that's it for All Quiet on the Western Front, the movie, and we'll be coming out in a couple weeks with our next book, right? Book's next?
The next book is The Silent Patient. The next movie is The Hobbit.
All right. Well, this was fun, and I'll catch you next time.
All righty.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye now.